Let's talk more about this with Karen Nance. She's a criminal defense attorney and legal analyst. Karen, there had to be a very small circle of trust at the court. Do we know how many people have access to this document, this leaked draft opinion?
Well, good morning, Adrienne. We know that each of the Supreme Court justices have up to 4 law clerks. So we're talking 9 times 4. So that's at least 36 people. But the issue is whether it came from internally or was there some type of computer hack or something where someone from the outside was able to access those computers and obtain the draft. So those will be scrutinized. Those people that have access to immediate access will be scrutinized by the marshal. And then the laborious act of going through each and every one of the computers to see if that's a possibility as well. So I'm sure that it will be investigated and we'll find, hopefully, sooner than later what the source of this leak was.
There's some debate in the legal world as to whether this actually could be deemed a crime. Why?
Well, the actual document, the draft, is not a classified document. So the crime would come in if the attorneys, meaning the law clerks, are questioned and they are not truthful in terms of what the information they have, in terms of like a forgery, not forgery, but a false claim or something along those lines of perjury. That would be able to be prosecuted. But if they were hacked in by somebody outside, then it would be more in the category of being a theft-related crime. So that would be the way. It depends on how the investigation turns out, will determine what crimes, if any, can be charged in this particular case.
And if it is indeed determined to be a crime, what would be the consequence?
Well, it would depend on whether it's charged as a minor crime, which is like a misdemeanor, or a more serious crime, a felony, which would obviously carry a lot more time, and the penalty would not only be a jail time, but also a restitution to the U.S. Supreme Court, meaning a monetary fine as well. So it's so early in the investigation, but I'm sure that the marshal she has a staff of 260 people that can assist her in trying to get to the bottom of this. So hopefully it'll be before the actual decision is made, which would be the end of, I believe, June or July. We're expecting the
June or July, we're expecting if this is actually finalized. I did have one more question for you from one of our viewers. This is Mike from Illinois. He wants to know, would this rare occurrence of overturning precedents, meaning Roe versus Wade, show the court's integrity, or is it a growing sign of the politicization of the Supreme Court?
Well, the court is really clear that they are not going to bow to public opinion. And so hopefully, even if people agree or disagree with the final decision of the court will not bow to public pressure. And there's going to be a lot of it, right? We see that already with the demonstrations throughout the country. And so the hope is that the integrity of the U.S. Supreme Court will remain, and regardless of what side of the aisle people fall on, that they can respect this body that has been appointed by the president and supported by the Congress and the Senate. So the hope is that whether you agree or disagree, you support and respect the institution of the U.S. government and abide by whatever their decisions are. And so whatever the decision is with the Roe versus Wade, whether it's upheld or overruled, that people need to support the government that we've created.
Yeah. Karen Nance, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being with us this morning. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.